I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who says, I should have seen it coming. But here I am, 32, standing in the middle of a pastel pink nightmare of a party, holding a car key like it's a ticking time bomb, while my niece shrieks loud enough to make the DJ flinch. My name's Logan, and up until 2 weeks ago, I was what you'd probably call the cool uncle. You know the type, young enough to relate, old enough to rent a car. I'd show up with Christmas gifts that actually made the kids smile, bought them their first concert tickets, taught them how to drive when their parents were too busy or too impatient. That was me, the middle brother, the peacemaker, the reliable one everyone turned to when they wanted something but didn't want to owe each other. And for a long time, I didn't mind. It was easier than confrontation, easier than saying no. My older sister, Candace, was the kind of person who could make a compliment feel like a warning. Her daughter, my niece, Lacey, was practically raised to believe the sun rose and set for her. From the time she was little, Lacey had a way of throwing a tantrum that made grown adults flinch. It wasn't just crying or yelling, it was precise, calculated. You take away her iPad, suddenly your coffee table has crayon artwork on it. Ground her from her phone, she'd find your backup charger and snap it in half. Every punishment came with a price, and Candace paid it gladly. Or rather, she passed the bill to everyone else. My younger brother, Aaron, and I were raised in a house where our mom worked doubles and our dad had a heart attack at 45. Responsibility was baked into us like it was part of our DNA. But Candace? She was the golden child. Mom's miracle baby. The girl who couldn't do wrong, even when she clearly did. And somehow, that same delusion passed cleanly onto Lacey like it was part of a trust fund. Don't get me wrong, I love my family. Or at least, I used to think I did. But love gets complicated when you realize it's always you footing the bill. I paid for Aaron's tuition once when his student loan didn't come through in time. I helped Mom with her mortgage during the pandemic. And when Candace forgot her wallet during a girl's trip to Miami, guess who Venmo'd her $800 to cover her hotel tab? That'd be me. So when Lacey's Sweet 16 started approaching and Candace mentioned how special she wanted it to be, I braced myself. The theme was something out of a teenage fever dream. Rose gold everything, a flower wall with her name and LED lights, a photographer, a TikTok booth, a customized playlist, and a guest list that included half the varsity football team and none of her actual family. Candace called it a small gathering. I called it what it was, a mini wedding without the groom. A week before the party, I got a text from Candace that said, "Hey Logan, if you happen to be shopping for Lacey's birthday, she's mentioned really wanting a white convertible. Just putting it out there." No question mark. No emoji that made it seem like a joke. Just that smiley face, like I was the family's personal genie. I laughed it off at first, showed the message to Aaron, who rolled his eyes and muttered something about Princess Lacey getting her chariot. But then Candace followed up. Twice. And here's the thing. I had been thinking about getting Lacey a car. Not a convertible. Not some brand new status symbol to flaunt on social media. But something safe. Reliable. A used, modest hatchback I could buy outright. I'd taught her how to drive, after all. Took her out every Saturday for 3 months. She was actually decent behind the wheel when she wasn't FaceTiming her friends in the back seat. So yeah, I caved. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I thought it might actually help. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd appreciate something practical. Something real. So I did my research. Found a gently used 2020 Honda Civic in pearl white, low mileage, good safety rating, and got a decent deal on the lease with full coverage. I even got it detailed and put a bow on top, red ribbon and all. It wasn't flashy, but it was clean, elegant. I imagined the moment she'd see it. How her face would light up, how Candace might tear up a little, and for once, say thank you instead of you shouldn't have, which was always code for not enough. But that's not what happened. The moment I handed her the keys, midway through the party, after the cake, but before the sparkler entrance, Lacey blinked at me like I'd just handed her a used toaster. "This isn't the color I wanted," she said, voice flat. For a second, I thought she was kidding. I even laughed. "What do you mean? It's pearl white, like you said." She turned toward the car in the driveway, scrunched her nose, and then, I kid you not, looked me dead in the eye and said, "That's not white. That's like off-white. Creamy. Gross." A few guests chuckled awkwardly, like it was part of a bit. Candace wasn't even embarrassed. She just tilted her wine glass and shrugged. She's very particular about her colors, Logan. You know how she is. Before I could say anything, Lacey shoved the keys back into my chest and stomped off, heels clicking like a drum roll, leaving me holding a $20,000 gesture like it was a used napkin. I stood there frozen, trying to smile it off, pretending the whispering from the guests didn't feel like acid on my skin. I didn't want to make a scene. That's what I kept telling myself. Don't ruin the party. Don't stoop to their level. Just breathe. But then, an hour later, I went out to check on the car. And that's when I saw it. 3 long, angry scratches down the driver's side door. Jagged. Fresh. Like someone had taken a key and dragged it without flinching. My heart dropped. I stared at it for a full 30 seconds before I even moved. And then I turned around, and there she was. Lacey, standing by the porch with 2 of her friends, giggling behind their hands. Candace was inside, taking selfies with the flower wall. I walked back in, face like stone, and tapped Candace on the shoulder. We need to talk. She glanced at me, then the car keys in my hand. Oh, is she ready to say thank you now? No, I said, but I'm about to say something. Her smile tightened like a noose. Logan, please don't make this a thing. She's just expressing herself. It's her birthday. You know how emotional girls get. She keyed the car, Candace. Her eyes didn't even widen. She just sighed, like I'd spilled juice on the carpet. Well, maybe next time you'll ask her what she wants instead of assuming. Excuse me. She didn't ask for a Civic. She asked for a convertible. If you're going to give a gift that big, you should have checked. Honestly, it feels a little passive-aggressive, like you're trying to make a point. I stared at her, disbelief swirling in my chest like a tornado. You're defending her. She vandalized a car I leased in my name. She's 16, Logan. Say sorry for the confusion and let it go. Or leave. I'm not ruining her night over your ego. I swear I stopped hearing the music then. All I could hear was my pulse, thudding like war drums in my ears. For the first time in years, I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I didn't try to play the calm, rational brother. Instead, I did 3 things. I walked out the front door. I got in the car. And I pulled up my insurance app. But that was only the beginning. It's strange how fast the switch flips when you finally decide you've had enough. One moment, you're tolerating years of rolled eyes, passive-aggressive digs, and backhanded comments disguised as family banter. The next, you're sitting in your car, scratched, disrespected, and suddenly wide awake to just how far gone things are. I didn't drive off that night, not yet. I just sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, watching people laugh and dance under string lights in the backyard like nothing had happened. Lacey was twirling in her glittery dress like she hadn't vandalized a car 2 hours earlier. Like she hadn't looked me in the eye and said, "Take it back." I canceled the insurance then and there. Unregistered it from her name. I figured I'd return it on Monday, eat the early termination fee, bite the loss. At least I'd be free of the headache. But that decision didn't come with relief. It came with something colder, heavier, a sense of betrayal that went deeper than a scratched car. Because this wasn't just about Lacey. This was years of walking on eggshells around Candace. Years of watching her suck the oxygen out of every room and gaslight everyone around her into thinking it was just her strong personality. And I was done being one of the enablers. I didn't sleep that night. I left the party quietly, didn't say goodbye, texted Aaron the next morning and said, "Next time there's a family event, don't count me in." He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Classic Aaron. Too non-confrontational to ask questions, but smart enough to know something had snapped. I tried to move on. Really. For about 3 weeks, I buried myself in work, gym, anything to keep my mind off the whole thing. But it didn't end. That's the thing about entitled people. They never just let you walk away. It started with a voicemail from Candace. "Hey Logan, I noticed the insurance got canceled on Lacey's car. Not sure what's going on, but she's really upset. Can you fix that today? She needs to drive to her SAT prep class this weekend." No apology. No mention of the keying. Just a casual assumption that I'd fix everything again. I ignored it. 2 days later, I got another one. This time angrier. "You can't just dump a car on a 16-year-old and then vanish, Logan. This isn't fair to her. Or me. You made a commitment. If you didn't want to help, you shouldn't have offered. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is childish." I blocked her number. That's when she used Mom. I got a call from her the next morning. Mom, who never liked getting involved in the drama, but somehow always ended up echoing Candace's narrative like a parrot. Logan, honey, can you just call your sister and make peace? She said Lacey's been crying every night since the party. This is not worth tearing the family apart over. Mom, she keyed my car. She destroyed property. And Candace told me to apologize to her. She's 16, Logan, and you didn't exactly buy her what she wanted. You set her up to be disappointed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So now it's my fault for not buying her a convertible? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying maybe this all got blown out of proportion. Just talk to your sister. Clear the air. I hung up. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just angry. I was exhausted. Exhausted from being the one expected to fix everything. From having boundaries treated like insults. From watching Candace manipulate the narrative while everyone else just nodded along to keep the peace. A few days later, Aaron invited me to grab lunch. We don't hang out often. He's got twins, a full-time job, a wife who doesn't like to share weekends. But I think he sensed something in me had shifted. We met at a diner we used to go to in high school, ordered greasy burgers, and for a while, just talked about nothing. But then, halfway through the meal, he said, "So, you hear about the car?" I tensed. What about it? Candace posted on Facebook. Said she's selling it. Said it's defective and that you tricked her into accepting a lemon. My jaw clenched. She what? She didn't say your name, but it's obvious. People in the comments are eating it up. Her friend Janice said, "Wow, some people just love to hurt their own family," and Candace liked it. I laughed. Out loud. Because at that point, the absurdity was cartoonish. She keyed the car, Aaron. I know. She called me selfish. I know. And she's trying to make me look like the bad guy? Aaron looked down at his plate. That's how she works. You've just never been on the receiving end before. I spent $6,000 on a down payment. Canceled the insurance. Took the hit on the lease. And now she's flipping it for cash. He nodded slowly, like he'd seen it coming. You should have recorded her. That whole night. I shook my head. She would have just spun it anyway. It didn't stop there. 2 days later, I got an alert from the leasing company. Someone tried to file a claim on the car under my name. Not just an accident report. Someone tried to transfer ownership. I had to call and explain everything to the rep, walk them through the fact that the car was no longer in her possession, that I had terminated the lease early and returned it to the dealership. They flagged the account and assured me they'd investigate. That night, I got another message, this time from Lacey herself. It was a screenshot of her Instagram story. A blurry photo of her standing next to a different white car, with the caption, "Thanks for nothing, Uncle L." It was followed by a DM. You ruined my sweet 16. I hate you. That one hit harder than I expected. I'd changed her diapers. Picked her up from school when Candace forgot. Helped her rehearse a monologue for her school play. We had inside jokes. I'd planned to teach her how to parallel park next month. I didn't reply. I couldn't. But I wasn't done. The final straw came at Sunday dinner. Despite everything, I went. I figured maybe, just maybe, facing it head-on would help. Maybe someone would acknowledge the insanity. Big mistake. Dinner was at Mom's house. Candace arrived late with Lacey, both dressed like they were headed to a fashion show. Lacey didn't look at me. Candace did. Smiled like nothing had happened. Logan, long time no see. You look tired. I didn't respond. Dinner was awkward. Tense. Mom kept trying to steer the conversation toward positive family memories, while Aaron stayed quiet and kept refilling his water glass. And then Candace dropped the bomb. I talked to a lawyer, she said casually, cutting into her roast chicken. Apparently what you did, canceling the insurance like that, pretty irresponsible. If Lacey had gotten into an accident, it would have been on your head. That's neglect, you know. I blinked. Are you threatening to sue me? She looked up, feigning surprise. Of course not. I'm just saying, if you're going to make big gestures, you should follow through. Otherwise people get hurt. Lacey chimed in then, voice low and cold. You embarrassed me. In front of everyone. I stared at both of them. You keyed the car, I said, my voice quiet but shaking. You vandalized something I bought for you. And I'm the one who embarrassed you? Lacey looked away. Candace raised an eyebrow. She was upset. Emotional. You knew how much she wanted a convertible. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, reached into my pocket, and pulled out the spare key. I'll be canceling everything that's left, I said, turning toward Mom. And I won't be back for dinners, birthdays, or holidays. Not until someone in this family learns what the word accountability means. Logan, sit down, Mom said sharply. We don't need drama at the table. There's already drama, I replied. You just pretend it's normal. And then I left. Walked out the door, down the driveway, back to my apartment, where I sat for hours replaying every moment of that night in my head. The entitlement, the gaslighting, the way they twisted everything until it looked like I was the problem. That was when something inside me finally snapped. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was ready. For the first time in my adult life, I stopped checking my phone in the morning. No unread messages. No missed calls. No guilt-inducing voicemails from mom. No passive-aggressive texts from Candace. Nothing. Just silence. And in that silence, I started to hear things I hadn't heard in years, my own thoughts. For weeks after that Sunday dinner, I didn't talk to my family. Not once. I didn't go to our usual weekly gatherings. I didn't show up for mom's brunch or Aaron's son's soccer game. I didn't reply to the group chat when someone shared a picture of a birthday cake or a blurry selfie from church. I didn't even open the notifications. I left the family group chat entirely after 2 passive-aggressive, "We miss you" memes from Candace. One had that smiling cartoon dog in a burning house with the caption, "This is fine." Another said, "I'm not mad, just disappointed." It took me exactly 8 seconds to hit leave group. 8 seconds to sever what had become a leash disguised as connection. But even though I wasn't talking to them anymore, they still lived in my head. I kept replaying the events in my mind like an editor stuck in a bad cut of a movie I didn't want to be in. Lacey's face when she shoved the keys into my chest. The sound of her heels stomping across the driveway. Candace's smirk. The way mom had told me I was overreacting. It messed with me more than I expected. I'd spent so long playing the dependable one that stepping back made me feel lost, untethered, like I had no role anymore. There were days I questioned if I'd gone too far, if I'd been too harsh, if maybe, just maybe, there was some truth in what Candace said, that maybe I should have asked Lacey what kind of car she wanted, that maybe I'd set her up to fail, or disappointed her, or made the moment about me. That's what gaslighting does. It sneaks in when you're alone, when your guard is down. It rewrites your memories and paints you as the villain in your own story. But the thing is, I knew I wasn't a villain. I was just finally drawing a line. And that's when the shift started. It wasn't some grand moment of reinvention. No dramatic haircut. No weekend getaway to find myself. No therapist giving me a eureka moment. It started small. I went back to that diner Aaron and I used to visit. Alone this time. Brought a book I'd been meaning to finish for years. I sat in the booth for 2 hours, sipping terrible coffee and eating a greasy cheeseburger, and for once, I didn't feel like I was on anyone's clock. No family updates to listen to. No guilt to swallow with my fries. Just quiet. The next week, I started waking up early again, not because I had to rush somewhere, but because I wanted to take walks. Long ones. Through my neighborhood. Past the park where I used to teach Lacey how to ride a bike when she was 5. It hurt at first. I'd see a girl her age giggling with her dad, or a family taking group photos, and this dull ache would form in my chest. But over time, the ache faded. I started to enjoy the walks for what they were, my time, my peace. And then something weird happened. I started getting better at my job. Like, really better. I'm a graphic designer. Freelance. For years, I juggled client work while also handling the emotional labor of my family. Half my deadlines were delayed because I was driving someone to an appointment or reviewing a school essay, or picking up decorations for someone else's birthday. I didn't even notice how much creative energy I'd been bleeding into my family drama until I stopped. Suddenly, I was churning out designs I actually liked, pitching ideas I'd been too tired to propose, picking up new clients from word of mouth. And before long, one of those clients, an indie board game company, offered me a long-term contract to design their next 3 releases. The money was good, but more than that, it was mine, fully mine. No one else had to sign off on it. No one else had a hand in it. I wasn't sacrificing weekends or canceling meetings to accommodate a birthday party or a guilt trip. I was building something for me. And as I slowly rebuilt that part of my life, I also started rebuilding my space. I'd always kept my apartment clean, but functional. Lately, I started making it feel like home. I repainted the walls, bought real artwork, stuff that made me smile. Reorganized my bookshelves, invested in better lighting, better linens, better cookware. Things I'd put off buying because someone in the family might need help soon. It felt good, liberating. And the best part? I started making friends again. Real ones. People who didn't know Candace. who didn't refer to me as Uncle Logan, people who weren't conditioned to expect me to be the fixer. I reconnected with old college buddies, joined a local trivia night at a brewery, started playing pickup basketball again on weekends. There was one night, probably about 2 months after the Sweet 16 disaster, where I came home from trivia, sat on my balcony with a cold beer, and realized I hadn't thought about my family all day. Not once. I hadn't checked to see if Candace had posted another passive-aggressive Facebook story. I hadn't wondered if Mom was disappointed in me. I hadn't replayed the sound of Lacey's voice yelling, "Take it back." I just lived. It felt like surfacing after years of swimming just below the waterline. Of course, life wasn't perfect. The damage wasn't magically undone. I still had moments, especially at night, where guilt crept in like fog under a door. I still missed certain things. Inside jokes, shared memories, the way Lacey used to hug me when she was little and call me her favorite grown-up. But I didn't miss them. Not as they were. Not the version of family I'd been tangled in. And then, about 3 months after the party, I got a text from Erin. It said, "Heads up, Candace is asking about you again. Said she's planning something and might need you involved. Just thought you should know." That single text sent a chill down my spine. Need me involved? In what? I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone, stood up, and walked to the kitchen to finish prepping the dinner I was making for a girl I'd recently started seeing. Her name was Leah. She was calm, kind, and asked me thoughtful questions without trying to fix me. I'd met her at the trivia night, and she liked that I cooked. Said it made her feel taken care of. I liked the sound of that. Taken care of. Not taken for granted. And that's when I realized something even deeper. I had changed. Not overnight. Not in one dramatic swoop. But bit by bit, I'd stopped being the person who put everyone else first by default. I'd started living for myself. Choosing peace over performance. Saying no without needing to justify it. And slowly, my life had started to reflect that shift. But as we sat down to eat that night, candles flickering, Leah smiling at something I'd said, my mind kept circling back to Erin's text. Candace was planning something. She needed me involved. And I knew her well enough to know. If she couldn't guilt me back into the fold, she'd try something worse. She'd try to force me in. I didn't know what she was planning. Not yet. But I had a bad feeling. A very bad feeling. Because for all her manipulation and melodrama, Candace wasn't stupid. She was calculated. And when entitled people feel like they've lost control over you, that's when they get dangerous. When you spend your whole life keeping the peace, people forget you're capable of starting a war. It had been over 3 months since I'd seen Candace or Lacey. The silence from Mom had stretched even longer, likely because Candace was running her mouth behind the scenes, painting herself as the victim of yet another family betrayal. I pictured the story she was telling people at brunch or during her wine-soaked book club, how her poor daughter was traumatized after being gifted a cheap car and abandoned, how her brother stormed out and cut ties over nothing, how she had no idea why he's being so dramatic. I didn't care anymore. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. But the truth was, I did care. I cared because I'd let it go on for too long. I'd allowed them to twist the truth into a knot so tangled no one else could see where it began. And I was done playing the bigger person. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to block them again. I was going to outsmart them. And that began with one question. What was Candace planning? I didn't have to wonder for long. 1 week after Erin's cryptic warning, I got a formal letter in the mail. Actual paper. Cream-colored envelope. No return address. Inside was a printed invitation. You are cordially invited to Lacey Monet Davis's redebutante celebration, a night of apologies and new beginnings. The name alone made me choke on my coffee. Redebutante? What was this, a Regency-era redemption arc? I kept reading. The invitation was dripping in fake forgiveness. Something about family unity, something about new traditions, and then, there it was. A thinly veiled line that read, "To those who made mistakes, this is your opportunity to make things right, in public, in person, and with grace." In other words, I was being summoned. Not invited. Not welcomed. Summoned. Candace wasn't planning a party. She was staging a public apology tour, with me as the opening act. She wanted me to show up, bow my head, and apologize for humiliating her daughter. She wanted witnesses. She wanted to forgive me in front of a room full of friends, neighbors, and people who didn't know the truth. And most of all, she wanted control back. But here's the thing about people like Candace. They're so used to orchestrating drama that they forget other people can play chess too. She didn't know it yet, but she just handed me the board. I called Aaron. She invited me too, he said before I could even get the words out. Said it would mean a lot to the family if I came. Which is hilarious, considering she hasn't called me since Lacey was born unless she needed a babysitter or a loan. Are you going? He hesitated. I was planning not to. But now, I don't know. If you go, I go. That gave me an idea. Actually, I said slowly, I think we should go. Wait, seriously? Yeah, but not as guests. Logan? No. Hear me out. She wants to put on a show. Fine. Let's give her one. I spent the next few days making calls. Not to lawyers. Not to revenge consultants or private investigators. That's not my style. I called people Candace didn't think I still spoke to. My cousin Jenna, who Candace had bullied out of the family group chat years ago for being negative. My Aunt Melinda, who Candace once accused of faking a back injury to get out of helping with Lacey's 5th birthday party. And most importantly, Cameron. Cameron was Lacey's former math tutor. Kind, sharp, and one of the few people who'd called out Lacey's entitlement without flinching. He answered on the first ring. Logan? Wow, haven't heard from you in forever. I need a favor. Is this about Candace? Yep. Then I'm in. By the end of the week, I had a small but mighty roster of people who had one thing in common. They all had stories. Real ones. About how Candace had manipulated, mistreated, or misused them. This wasn't a revenge mob. It was a support group, and I was done letting her spin the narrative. But it wasn't just about exposing her anymore. It was about reclaiming the story. Because while she'd spent months smearing my name in pastel-colored lies, I'd been rebuilding my life. And now, I was ready to show it. I RSVP'd to the redebutante celebration via email, short, polite, and with just enough ambiguity to keep her guessing. Looking forward to seeing everyone and clearing the air. A few hours later, Candace posted a vague status update. Sometimes the best apology is just showing up. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. She had no idea. In the days leading up to the event, I went full recon mode. I needed to know everything. Where it was being held. Who was going. What the schedule looked like. Thankfully, Jenna still had a mutual friend who'd been roped into helping Candace plan the thing, and she was more than happy to share screenshots. Apparently, Candace had rented out a mid-tier event space downtown. Nothing fancy, but just upscale enough to feel exclusive. There was going to be a DJ, a photo wall, speeches, and, get this, a forgiveness ceremony. What is a forgiveness ceremony, you ask? According to the schedule, it was a moment where key family members will take turns sharing lessons learned and offering each other healing words. Translation, a public shaming disguised as spiritual growth. I knew exactly what Candace had planned. She'd give some sugary speech about motherhood. Lacey would tearfully say she didn't mean to lash out. And then I'd be expected to grab the mic and say something like, I'm sorry I overreacted. I never should have canceled the lease. You're an amazing daughter, Lacey. And then Candace would smile, hug me, and whisper, we're good now. And everyone saw it. Yeah, not happening. The night before the event, I couldn't sleep. Not out of nerves. Out of clarity. I sat on my balcony again, same spot where I'd first started to feel peace coming back into my life. I looked out at the city lights and thought about the version of me that would have walked into that event 6 months ago, shoulders hunched, apology rehearsed, hoping to avoid conflict. That man was gone. And in his place, someone who wasn't just ready to stand his ground, but ready to flip the script. Because what Candace didn't know, what she could never know, is that I'd documented everything. Every text, every voicemail, every screenshot, every message Lacey had sent, every insurance cancellation record, the scratch report from the dealership, the proof of lease termination, even the passive-aggressive comments on social media. It was all tucked neatly into a digital folder. And I was ready to use it, not to start a war, but to end her illusion of control. The night of the redebutante celebration arrived with the kind of dramatic tension you only see in movies, where the protagonist walks into a room knowing exactly what's about to happen, while everyone else is blissfully unaware of the incoming storm. I pulled up to the event center in a crisp button-down, clean shave, steady hands. I wasn't here to grovel, and I wasn't here to fight. I wasn't even here to expose anyone violently or theatrically. My revenge wasn't about making a scene. It was about ending a cycle. When I walked inside, The room looked like Pinterest had exploded, soft pink uplighting, a balloon arch shaped like Lacey's initials, glitter accents everywhere. Guests milled around with sparkling lemonade and tiny hors d'oeuvres. A DJ played generic pop in the background. Everything felt staged, curated, artificial. And then I saw them. Candace, Lacey, matching white dresses, matching smug smiles, matching energy that screamed this is our stage, and everyone else is just lucky to be here. Candace spotted me instantly. Her expression flickered with surprise. She must have expected me to bail or show up looking defeated. Instead, I walked in calmly, confidently, a small smile curling on my face. "Logan, you made it," she exclaimed, already raising her voice so the nearby guests would hear. "We're so glad you decided to rejoin the family." Rejoin the family. Not glad to see you. Not let's talk. Rejoin. As if I'd been excommunicated and she was the high priestess granting me entry again. "Wouldn't miss it," I said politely. Lacey approached, arms crossed. "Before anything else, I just want you to know I'm willing to forgive you. Tonight's about healing." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I nodded. "Good to know." The ceremony began 20 minutes later. Chairs were arranged theater style. Candace stood at the mic, holding note cards like she was accepting an award. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice sugary sweet. "Tonight is about growth, change, forgiveness, and recognizing that even when family members make mistakes, we can come together and move forward." Subtle glances were thrown my way. Guests murmured sympathetically. Candace continued. "My daughter Lacey," she said dramatically, placing a hand on her heart, "went through a traumatizing experience this year. She was given a car that didn't meet her expectations and then was abandoned publicly when she sought honesty and support. But tonight, we heal." Lacey stepped forward, sniffled on cue, and took her place beside her mother. Then Candace dropped the line she'd been rehearsing for weeks. "And now, I'd like to invite my brother, Logan, to come up and share his apology." A spotlight literally shifted toward me. The room got quiet. Candace's chin lifted, victorious. Lacey's arms folded tighter. Guests leaned in like they were about to witness a tender Hallmark moment. I stood slowly and walked toward the stage with a measured calm that made Candace shift anxiously behind her mask of confidence. When I reached the mic, I looked out over the crowd, then at Candace, then at Lacey, and I smiled. "Thank you for giving me the chance to speak," I began, voice steady. "Before anything else, I want to make sure we're all on the same page." I pulled my phone from my pocket. Candace stiffened. Lacey blinked rapidly. "I want to share exactly what happened," I said. "Not rumors. Not assumptions. Facts." I tapped the screen. Behind me, the projector flickered to life, and the first slide appeared. A high-resolution photo of the Honda Civic. Specifically, the fresh, deep, unmistakable key scratches running the length of the driver's door. The room gasped. I continued calmly. This was taken 15 minutes after I handed Lacey the keys to her new car. A car I leased for her with my own money. A car she rejected because the shade of white wasn't good enough. Candace stepped forward, hissing quietly. "Logan, this is not the time." I held up a hand. "Oh, I agree. This is way overdue." Next slide. A screenshot of Lacey's DM. "You ruined my sweet 16. I hate you." Then another. Then another. Guests were whispering now, uncomfortable, shocked, turning to look at Candace with growing suspicion. Candace lunged for the mic. I didn't let her reach it. I gently stepped sideways, blocking her path with a single quiet movement that somehow felt louder than shouting. "I'm not here to attack anyone," I continued. "I just want the truth on record. Because for months, I've been painted as the villain. The uncle who abandoned a child. The brother who overreacted. But here's the reality. My boundaries were broken, my generosity was abused, and instead of accountability, I received blame." Slide after slide displayed short clips, screenshots, and voice memos. I didn't include anything cruel, nothing exaggerated, only raw, irrefutable facts. Candace looked like she was melting, her confidence draining, her posture collapsing, her eyes darting around as she realized the room was slipping out of her grip. Lacey shrank behind her mother. Guests weren't whispering anymore. Some were outright shaking their heads. One aunt in the second row muttered, "I knew something was off." Another guest whispered, "Wasn't he the one who paid for her summer camp last year?" Then the final slide appeared. A screenshot of Candace's attempt to transfer ownership of the car using my name. Timestamped, documented, and unmistakably hers. This time, the room silenced itself. I lowered the phone. What I want isn't an apology, I said calmly. It's clarity. I've spent my whole life giving, helping, fixing, smoothing things over for people who never once paused to ask if I needed anything. And when I finally set a boundary, I became the villain in someone else's story. I looked directly at Candace. You invited me here to embarrass me, to force a public surrender. I paused. I'm doing the opposite. I turned to the audience. I'm stepping back. From the manipulation. From the guilt. From the rewriting of events. I will not apologize for refusing to be treated like an ATM. I will not apologize for walking away when treated with disrespect. And I will not apologize for protecting my peace. I stepped away from the mic. I truly hope this family heals. But it won't be on my back anymore. The silence that followed was electric, sharp, cold, and definitive. Then guests started standing. Not to applaud. Not to jeer. They simply stood because the event was over. The illusion was broken. Candace's face was drained of color. She looked around desperately, searching for someone, anyone, to take her side. No one did. Not one. Lacey lifted her phone, scrolling furiously, her face crumpling as she realized her curated image had just cracked wide open. Mom, who had been sitting in the front row, didn't look angry. She looked heartbroken, but not at me, at the truth that had finally surfaced. I picked up my coat, nodded respectfully to the guests I passed, walked out of the event center with slow, steady confidence. No theatrics, no gloating, no victory smirk, just quiet resolution. Aaron caught up to me outside, breathless. Logan, he said, that was, wow. I didn't want to hurt anyone, I replied. I just wanted the truth out. He nodded. It needed to happen. We stood there for a moment, two brothers who had tiptoed around a tornado for too many years. Then he said softly, so what now? I took a deep breath of the cool night air. Now, I said, I finally live my life. And that's exactly what I did. In the months that followed, the fallout was volcanic. People distanced themselves from Candace. Word spread fast about the event. Lacey's reputation at school cracked. Mom started calling me more, not to guilt me, but to apologize. Genuinely. Candace sent one long, rambling email a month later attempting to explain her behavior, but I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My revenge wasn't the spectacle. My revenge was my absence, my peace, my life returning to me. And now, for the first time in years, I feel free. I didn't win by fighting them. I won by finally walking away from a battlefield that should have never been mine.